Before we get to the story, I'd like to say thanks so much for visiting my new channel. I'm going to be uploading cosmic horror related stories every single day. So if that sounds good, please drop a like and don't forget to subscribe. It means a lot, especially when just getting started. I hope you enjoy the story. Day 31, and I'm eating a rehydrated pasta situation out of a pouch and looking at the Earth through the observation port and thinking about nothing in particular, which is one of my favorite things to do up here and one of the things people on the ground find hardest to understand about this job. They always ask if it gets lonely. I never know how to answer that because lonely implies wanting something you don't have, and up here, I have everything the job requires and I'm the kind of person the job requires it for. Reach Station is a platform slightly larger than a shipping container with 2 docking ports, an EVA airlock, a sleeping berth, a workstation, a galley the size of a closet, and all the systems needed to keep one person functional and working for 90 days. No crew, no roommates, just me and the station and the orbital band and the work. The work is satellite maintenance. I go out, I fix things, I come back in. It's technical and physical and demands enough concentration that the hours move at a good pace. And when I'm back inside and the suit is racked and the log is updated, I have the specific satisfaction of someone who has done a concrete thing with their hands and can point to the result. I've done 3 previous rotations on platforms like this one. I requested a 4th because I wanted to come back, not because I had to. I'm telling you this so you understand that what I've been seeing out there is not the product of isolation wearing on someone who wasn't built for it. I was built for this. I know the difference between what my brain does when it's tired and what my eyes do when they're showing me something real. I know what I saw. EVA 4 was day 25. Routine maintenance on a communications satellite, designated in my work order as CS-114, sitting about 300 meters off the station's port side. 2 hours of work, nothing unusual. The kind of job I've done enough times that my hands know most of it without needing my full attention, which frees the rest of me up to appreciate being outside in a way that never gets old. I know most people find the idea of an EVA terrifying. The suit, the tether, the hard nothing in every direction, the earth so large below you that it stops looking like something you could go back to and starts looking like a feature of the view. I find it clarifying. All the small noise of being a person gets very quiet out there, and what's left is just the job and the suit and the silence and the stars. I've logged more EVA hours than anyone else in my company's rotation program. I'm not bragging about that. I'm saying it as context. On the way back from CS-114, making my way hand over hand along the tether toward the airlock, something moved in my peripheral vision. Off to the right and below, in the lower quadrant of my visor where you're not usually looking because there's nothing scheduled to be there. Movement that registered as wrong in the specific way that wrong movement registers. The way your eye catches something going the wrong speed in the wrong direction before your brain has finished processing it. I turned and looked, and there was nothing there. Standard scatter of track debris in that orbital band. A couple of distant satellites I recognized from the pre-EVA catalog. Nothing else. I spent 30 seconds scanning, and then I went inside and logged it under visual artifact and told myself It was what long EVAs do to tired eyes in high contrast light. The brain fills in movement sometimes. It's documented. I filed it and moved on. I filed it that way for 6 days. EVA 5 was day 31. Different satellite, longer duration, farther from the station than CS 114 had been. 90 minutes in, coming around the underside of the target to reach a component on its far side, I saw it again. This time, I was less tired and the movement was closer to the center of my visor before it stopped. And what I caught in those 2 seconds before it went still was enough to tell me my brain hadn't manufactured it. Large. That was the first word that landed. Large in a way that should have shown up on my pre-EVA debris scan, which I run every time before I go out, because knowing what's in the orbital environment around me is not optional, it's the job. Large enough that at the distance I was estimating, somewhere between 200 and 300 meters, it was clearly not a satellite in any configuration I recognized from the catalogued objects in this band, and it wasn't moving the way debris moves. Debris has a drift to it, a passive quality. This was moving with a quality I kept trying to find a different word for and kept landing on the same one. Choosing. It was choosing its position the way something does when it has a position it wants to be in and is getting there. I watched the area for another 4 minutes before finishing the job and heading back. I didn't see it again. Inside, during the repressurization cycle, I sat in the airlock and thought about large and choosing its position as a description of something in low Earth orbit that hadn't appeared on any scan. And I thought about what I was going to do with that. I didn't put it in the official log, not yet. I needed to see it again before I put something like that in writing, because putting something like that in writing has a shape to it, a permanence, and I wanted to be certain before I gave it that. I spent the 2 days between EVA 5 and 6 going through everything the station's tracking systems had access to. Debris catalog, registered satellites, known orbital population in my band, and the adjacent bands above and below. I know how to use these systems properly because understanding what's sharing your orbital environment is part of the job, and I went through all of it carefully. I didn't find it, not in the debris catalog, which should have caught anything the size I'd estimated unless it was too small to track, and what I'd seen was not too small to track. Not in the satellite registry, not in any anomaly flag the station's own sensors had generated in the past 31 days. As far as every system available to me was concerned, whatever I'd seen wasn't there. I pulled the EVA suit camera footage next. The suit records automatically during all EVAs, and I'd reviewed it before, casually, the way you sometimes review your own work. I went to the segment from EVA 5 the moment I'd seen the movement, and I watched the footage of exactly what I'd been looking at when it happened. The orbital band, the Earth curve, the distant scatter of sunlit debris. Nothing else. Whatever I'd seen hadn't shown up on the camera. I sat at the workstation for a long time after that. I thought about the difference between a thing that doesn't appear on tracking systems and a thing that doesn't appear on camera, and how both of those could be true of the same object, and what kind of object that would have to be. I didn't come up with an answer I was comfortable with. I scheduled EVA 6 for 2 days earlier than the work order required and told myself I was going out to confirm there was nothing there. I knew that wasn't the only reason. It was there, closer than either previous sighting. When I turned to look at it directly this time, I got a longer look before it stilled or receded or did whatever it did when I faced it, and longer was enough to settle every remaining doubt I'd been holding on to. The size of it was the thing that landed first, not because I could measure it, but because at the distance I estimated it at somewhere between 50 and 100 meters from my position, it occupied enough of the visual field to be unmistakable. It existed in the orbital environment, the way something exists when it belongs there, not floating the way an object floats when it's simply subject to the physics of the place, but present the way something is present when the place is its natural environment and it knows how to use it. It wasn't a shape I had a reference for, not mechanical, not geometric in any way I could name. The surface or outer aspect of it, whatever you called a part of it that faced me, had a quality I couldn't resolve into a material I recognized. It was still, completely still, in the deliberate way, and then it was gone from my direct view, and I was looking at empty space. I stayed outside 20 minutes past the point where the work was done. I watched the area from every angle my tether allowed me to reach. It didn't show itself again. On the way back to the airlock, I checked over my shoulder 3 times. I mapped the sightings after EVA 6, not in the official log, in a personal document I kept on my personal device rather than the station system. 3 sightings, 3 estimated positions, plotted relative to the station and to my own position during each EVA. The distances were decreasing. EVA 4 had been far enough out that I dismissed it. EVA 5 was closer. EVA 6 was closer still, close enough that I couldn't dismiss it as anything. The positions clustered. That was the second thing, and in some ways, the worst thing. They weren't distributed randomly around the station. They were consistently in the same broad region, off the port side and slightly below Reach Station's orbital plane. I looked at that region on my plot for a while, and then I understood why it was familiar. It was the position with the clearest sightline to the EVA airlock. 3 sightings across multiple EVAs, and every one of them from the position in the orbital band where you could most clearly see where I came and went. I sat with that for a long time. I thought about what it meant for something to have, across 3 separate encounters over multiple days, placed itself consistently where it could observe the point of entry and exit of the only structure in this part of the orbital band that had a person in it. I messaged my company's operations contact. I kept it neutral, asked whether there had been any reports from other rotation personnel of unidentified objects near Reach Station or in the adjacent orbital bands. The response came back 6 hours later. No reports. Did I need equipment support? I said no and closed the message. EVA 7. I went out because the schedule required it and because not going out would mean explaining why. And I wasn't ready to have that conversation yet. 40 minutes into the job, I became aware of it without seeing it. I've thought a lot about how to describe this, and I keep coming back to the same language because it's the most accurate language I have. A quality of the space to my left and below that was different from the usual quality of EVA silence, which is already its own particular silence, denser and more complete than anything on the ground. a sense of that region of the orbital band being occupied that didn't come from seeing anything in it. I kept working because the alternative was to stop working and I had a job to finish. When I turned towards the airlock to head back, I looked. It was the closest it had been. Close enough that the size of it was genuinely alarming in a way the previous sightings hadn't been. Close enough that I could see the detail of its outer surface as more than a uniform dark shape. I won't try to describe the detail because I don't have the vocabulary for it, and wrong descriptions are worse than no description. I looked at it for several seconds, and then it withdrew from my direct line of sight with the smooth, unhurried quality it always had, and I covered the remaining distance to the airlock faster than I needed to. Inside, during repressurization, I checked the suit camera footage. The orbital band, empty, nothing there. I found the marks on day 49. I was at the observation port doing a routine exterior visual check, something I did every few days to catch anything developing on the outer hull before it became a maintenance issue. The marks were near the airlock, not in a location I touched during EVAs, not near any component I had work reason to access. A section of exterior hull surface that had no reason for contact of any kind. I couldn't see them clearly through the port. I photographed them as best I could through the glass and looked at the photographs on my workstation screen with the contrast pushed up. They weren't impact scoring. Orbital debris impact leaves a specific kind of mark, a characteristic texture I knew well from previous rotations. These weren't that. They had a quality I couldn't categorize and didn't want to spend too long trying to categorize because the longer I looked at the photographs, the more clearly I understood what they meant. It had been at the airlock, not during an EVA. While I was inside, it had been close enough to the hull to leave marks on a section of surface I never touched, in the location on the station's exterior with the most direct relationship to the airlock door. And it had done this at some point between the last exterior check and this one, which meant at some point in the past several days, while I was sleeping or working or eating pasta out of a pouch and looking at the earth. I sat at the workstation and looked at the photographs and thought about something approaching the airlock from outside while I was inside, and I thought about the thickness of the airlock door, and I thought about the decreasing distances across 7 EVAs, and I thought about all of it together. Then I called operations. I told them everything. All of it. From EVA 4 through the photographs. In order. In plain language. The way I'd write a maintenance report. What I saw. When I saw it. How close it was. What the camera showed. What the tracking systems showed. What the marks looked like. And where they were. I kept my voice at the same level I use for technical briefings, because that was the register I needed to stay in. There was a pause after I finished, a longer pause than the communications delay accounted for. They put me on hold. I waited 11 minutes. I know because I was watching the clock in the way you watch a clock when watching it is the only thing you can do. Then a different voice came on. Someone I hadn't spoken to before, who gave me a department name rather than a personal name. They asked me to transmit the photographs and the personal document I'd been keeping. I sent both. There was another wait, shorter this time. When the voice came back, it told me to complete my current rotation as scheduled. Continue EVAs as planned. Update my sighting records in real time going forward. It told me my report had been received and was under review. It told me this in the tone of someone reading from a response they had prepared in advance, which meant it was a response they'd had reason to prepare. I asked if anyone else had reported this. The voice said my report was under review. I asked if I should suspend EVA operations. The voice said to continue as scheduled. I closed the channel and sat at the station's one small table, the only table in the station that was shaped like a shipping container with one person in it, and I looked out the observation port at the orbital band and thought about continue as scheduled. I thought about what that phrase meant from the perspective of someone who had just described in plain language a thing that had been systematically reducing the distance between itself and the airlock of my station and had been close enough at some point to touch the outer hull. I thought about the fact that the voice on the other end had not asked me what I thought it was, had not asked for clarification on any point of the description, had gone on hold for 11 minutes and come back with a prepared response. I thought about what you'd need to have received before, and how many times before a report like mine produced a prepared response. Day 52. 3 days since that call, and I've gone over it enough times that going over it again isn't giving me anything new, so I'm putting it down here instead. EVA 8 is tomorrow morning. I'm going to do it. Not because operations told me to, or not only because of that. I'm going to do it because not doing it doesn't change what's outside the airlock. It just means I go into the next EVA without knowing where in the orbital band it currently is, and knowing where it is feels better than not knowing, even when where it is has been getting closer on a trajectory I can plot with 3 data points. I've been thinking about patience, about what it takes to approach something the way this thing has been approaching the station, EVA by EVA, incrementally, without rushing, without retreating, just reducing the gap by a measurable amount each time and then holding the new position. I think about the kind of patience that's not waiting so much as it is processing, taking the time to understand something before closing the distance further, learning maybe what the thing it's approaching does, where it goes, how long it stays out, what route it takes back to the door. I think about the marks near the airlock and about what they tell me about how close it was willing to get while I was inside. And I try to find a reading of that which is less alarming than the most obvious one, and I haven't found it yet. 38 days left on this rotation. I've done the math on those 38 days more times than is useful. I've thought about the trajectory of the sightings, the decreasing distances, the marks, and I've tried to calculate where the progression leads before my relief arrives and takes me home, and the math doesn't come out the way I want it to. Tomorrow, I'm going to suit up and run pre-EVA checks and go through that airlock and do the job the way I've done it for 3 previous rotations, because that's what I know how to do, and because the work doesn't stop being the work. Just because something out there has decided to be interested in the person doing it. I'm going to look for it on the way out and on the way back and at every point in between where I have a moment to look. I'm hoping when I find it that the distance is still in my favor. I'm hoping whatever it's been learning out there in the orbital band across 8 EVAs and 1 unannounced visit to my hull, whatever it's been adding up in that patient, unhurried way, doesn't finish adding up to something before I'm back inside with the airlock sealed behind me. 38 days. I'm going to try to sleep now. In the morning, I'm going outside